We're having a delicious meal in the mess hall because there's a first time for everything. The reason is because Seven is showing off her new skills, and we'll give a point to the writers as a result, a reference about her expanding palate probably being a nod to the events of Body and Soul earlier in the season. Like all nice things on Voyager, the universe chooses to interrupt it. A wibbly of some kind is pulling us towards it. Janeway heads for the bridge as an external shot shows us that the wibbly is actually a swirly. That's up the danger level, so we break out the old science fiction favourite of reversing the shield polarity. Had I thought about it at the start of making these videos, I'd have kept a record of the times that's been tried versus the occasions where it's actually proven useful. I suspect the ratio would be embarrassingly low. It certainly doesn't help us this time, and when the shaking stops, we find ourselves unable to see any stars. A wormhole perhaps back to the space we saw in Night at the start of Season 5. The crew called that the Void, which I note is also today's title. If that's where we are, it's a little more occupied this time, as we're immediately attacked. We recognise the weapons as from the dickheads back in Dragon's Teeth from Season 6, but the ship is a bit of a bodge job, so there's no guarantee it's them pulling the trigger. Before we can poop back, another ship arrives and chases off the first. Not to save us, it seems, but because they want to be the ones to kick the shit out of us. It's not random violence, though. A breach in the shield, which may or may not still have reversed polarity if you're keeping track, allows the new ship to nick some of our stuff before scarpering. We can't follow them either, as this place is doing a number on our ability to navigate, and that's going to be a problem. They nicked most of our food, but that just saves us from death by slow poisoning from Neelix. Most concerning is the deuterium they've nicked, something we need for power. Normally that wouldn't matter, as it's quite common, a fact that we chose to forget back in the episode Demon, but let's ignore that for now. Wherever we've ended up doesn't seem to have any, meaning that we're going to be in deep shit sometime soon. That probably also explains the significant quantity of derelict ships in the area. We may be dead long before the deuterium becomes an issue based on the interest in us. Another ship is approaching, though thankfully whoever's flying this one wants to talk. He introduces himself as Valen, suggesting one of the writers was fond of Babylon 5. It's quite the coincidence if they weren't, not least of which because the actor we're looking at also appeared in that a number of times. It's a small universe. Editing note, after writing this I discovered the director of the episode also worked on Babylon 5. I think we can probably rule out coincidence. Valen's the first friendly face we've seen since arriving. Actually, he's the only face we've seen since arriving, but that's not the point. The point is, he's a useful conduit for a lore dump, and that's what we use him for here. We're in a bubble isolated from the rest of space because something, subspace, whatever. The swirlies pull things in but don't let them out again, which would also mean that they pull in the background material of interstellar space like deuterium, but let's ignore that for now. Wherever we are, Valen's been here for 5 years and he's seen a lot of other ships try to escape. Precisely 0 have succeeded. That's why he thinks we'll have to join in preying on new ships as they arrive, and he'll help by selling us data on the most serious threats in here so we can become the biggest bully. All he wants in exchange is a load of our fireworks. Janeway politely tells him to get fucked and adds that we don't trade weapons, apart from the times that we do, anyway. Valen thinks that we'll change our minds when things get desperate and leaves. That desperation may not be far away. The bubble we're in is eating power to the point where our deuterium will be gone in 10 days. Whilst probably not intentional, we'll be generous and say that's why the background material those swirlies pull in is gone too. We'd best find a way out then, and Seven has a potential answer. Astrometrics can identify the swirlies before they happen, and if we're willing to get inside, ride the initial outward burst. It'll be a rough ride though, and we'll have to force our way out at the end when it starts to suck things back in, the word polarity being used again to let you know that this shit is very serious. We'll give it a go, but we're only 10 minutes into the episode, which means it's not going to work. Bits of Voyager do a kaboom and we fall back into the bubble. Oh, and the warp core is dead, so that's that fucked as well. We've cut power to anything non-essential, and rationing will give us a week, but we're not going to get out of here until we find new deuterium. Or old deuterium, I suppose, Janeway thinking we should track down the ship that robbed us so we can take our shit back. Somebody's already had the same idea, it seems. Either that or their ship was designed by the same person who wrote the holodeck safeties. Whatever the cause, it's been mostly stripped clean. Mostly isn't completely, though, and we grab a part that we can use for power, teleporting it to a cargo bay. We get a little more than we bargained for, a survivor hiding in the part, and he's injured to boot. We could have done without the extra mouth to feed, but maybe he knows something useful. If he does, he's keeping it to himself. The doc suggesting he simply can't talk might explain it, though the question of why our scans didn't detect him on the wreckage remains unanswered. While initially skittish and resisting the doc's attempts to treat a leg wound, he seems to be calming. We'll try and find more of his people while we track down whoever bollocksed up his ship. A little detective work suggests the responsible party is already known to us. Valen greets us again and asks if we've reconsidered, becoming a touch miffed when we say we know he's got our stuff and we want it back. We stop him before he can scarper and grab back what was ours, Janeway refusing to take more when Seven and Paris point out that he has significant quantities of food and wouldn't hesitate to rob us. They comply, but it's clear not everybody is in agreement about the decision. Chakotay and Tuvok take their concerns to her in private, suggesting that maybe we could do a little bit of theft, as a treat. Janeway's response is that we should instead make an alliance with the ships in here and pool resources to get out. We almost made it the last time, so another attempt could finish the job. All we have to do is convince a group of muggers who shoot people on sight that we should be cooperating. The way we do that is by sharing some of our stuff. It gets people through the door at least, and gives us a chance to explain our intentions, and how maybe not blowing up ships as soon as they get pulled into the bubble might give us all a better chance of getting the fuck out of here. People don't seem entirely convinced, but we're spreading the word if nothing else. And what of those who don't use words? Well, the doc's been playing opera to him, and he seems to like it, so much so that the doc started calling him Fantome. Seven points out the irony of this given the doc's inability to do so for himself, but I'm sure that the plot element of his name will be swiftly and satisfyingly concluded. The music has calmed him enough to let the doc near, and he's learned that Fantome is intelligent, and that he can hide his own life signs, which is why we didn't detect him before. That's twice we've mentioned it now, so get ready for it to be a plot point. Seven realizes that Fantome's enjoyment of opera means that while he may not speak, he's able to hear, or at least feel sonic vibration, I guess. A test with different notes played while holding different items proves that he understands. It'll be a while before we have a big enough vocabulary for a proper discussion, but at least it's a start. As they're learning to talk with music, Voyager's detected one of those swirlies, and it's pulled in a ship. We move in to help them while Valen and a mate arrive and start pooping at it. A call fails to convince him to bugger off, and they switch to pooping at us. The new ship tries to surrender to us, a complete lack of situational awareness rarely seen outside of Starfleet security personnel, but one that is in keeping with the last time we met these pound shops on Tarans. After we clear up the misunderstanding, we learn that they're unarmed, which is going to be a bit of a problem, as we're currently getting our asses handed to us. The arrival of another ship has things looking grim, until it starts firing on Valen and his mate, who promptly scarper. It's the guy from earlier who we gave food and medicine to in an attempt to enlist them into our nascent alliance, and it's only gone and bloody worked. Federation 2, Alliance Boogaloo, has gathered a few more members since the rumble we had with Valen. A new prospect is over for dinner, and Janeway mentions another member having significantly improved replicator efficiency, something I suspect we'll forget about at the end of the episode if we ever need to talk about replicator rations in another story. In other news, it would appear I was wrong about not having a conversation with Fantome anytime soon, as that's precisely what they're doing by playing sequences of notes on a tablet. The doc's showing him round Voyager, and we visit the mess hall while we're hosting a number of our Alliance members. The new prospect sees Fantome and calls him a parasite, saying members of his species stow away on ships and steal food. It would appear Fantome was not a part of the crew from the ship that robbed us. The doc diplomatically tells the new guy to eat a big dog-shit sandwich, and Janeway explains that the Federation doesn't discriminate, as long as you don't count androids or holograms, obviously. Now that we've had a chance to study Fantome's biology, Janeway says she'd be happy to scan the new guy's ship and teleport any of his stowaways onto Voyager, which is a bit of a mixed message on acceptance, but they're probably safer with us. That's assuming we don't blow up Voyager anyway. Some fiddling in engineering causes a minor kaboom. We need a particular gizmo to make a shield that'll fit around all of the ships in our alliance so we can all leg it at the same time, but nobody has one, so we're trying to build it from scratch. This is watched by the aliens we saved from Valen, the Thumbfaces who spied on the dock back in Season 6. They're up to their old shit again, but this time in support of the Alliance. So they say, anyway. Their interest at the moment seems to be on seeing which members of the Alliance are hoarding supplies, some booze in this particular case. Tuvok finds them using big screen mode in astrometrics for their spying and is concerned that they bypass security measures, something that he should really be used to by this point. They drop a line about now being able to spy on any ship in the bubble, so I'm guessing that'll matter later on. And speaking of unresolved plot threads, Fantome has some new friends, presumably ones taken from the ship of the new member, who called them vermin. He's taught them all how to communicate with music, and the speed at which he accomplished this, combined with the complexity of their conversations, suggests they're all highly intelligent. We also learn they've told us they were born here, possibly even a native species, to the bubble, but Janeway's called to do something else, and the camera follows her. Excellent news. The newest member of the Alliance has found one of those gizmos we need. Less excellent news. After a little verbal fumbling, we discover he stole it and also killed the people it belonged to. Who could have possibly guessed that the racist would be a wrong-un? Janeway tells him to take it and fuck off, a decision that doesn't go down too well with those who just watch their best chance of escape and getting thrown out of the Alliance. The Alliance survives, but it's significantly smaller than it was. A few of the others left with Captain Murderbigot, and Janeway's bemoaning her own actions to Chakotay. Not for throwing him out, but for letting him in to begin with, a decision that caused the others to leave. We're still working on making one of those gizmos ourselves, but we need to get our asses in gear. Those thumb faces have been spying on Captain Murderbigot, and he's forming an alliance of his own with Valen and plans to attack in the near future. Tuvok's obviously fine with a little espionage, as long as it's not against our own members. He was a spy, after all. That's the thumb face subplot wrapped up, so let's move to Fantome. Janeway pops into sickbay to let the Doc and our guests know that we'll be trying to leave before Murderbigot and Valen can pop over and kaboomas, and Fantome's people are welcome to tag along if they want. They decline, as this is their home, and we discuss teleporting them elsewhere. Fantome appreciates what we've done for them, though, and offers to help. It's montage time, because even Voyager knows that a couple of days fucking around with technical stuff is boring. We return to the plot to find Voyager in mood lighting mode. As everything was already dimmed before, the only difference is the red alert light and the alarm, which means we're actually using more energy than if we hadn't bothered, but maybe it's to motivate people. Kim finds a swirly and we start trying to scarp her, as Murderbigot and his mates arrive to make good on the first half of his name. We've got a plan though, and it involves Fantome. Everybody fires at the two lead ships of Murderbigot and Valen, damaging their shields enough to teleport Fantome and his mates onto them. Fantome's sabotage squads manage to disable the ships while we make a mega shield, and as we reach the rim of the swirly, we all put our foot down and scarp her. Janeway's thanking the members of our new alliance before we all part ways. I mean, I guess we could use astrometrics to identify the next swirly and fire a capsule with data on how to escape and the resources needed to make it happen, but that could take literally hours, so we're not going to. Besides, they don't deserve saving. After all, any crew that's willing to go along with the crimes of a captain should be considered complicit in them. Janeway and Chakotay watch as our allies are teleported back to their ships, and we leave them to compare this week's experience with being back in the Federation again, as we fly away. Do you ever feel like something was specifically made as a monkey's paw just for you? I'm a sucker for continuity and complexity and ethics. On paper, this episode is for me. And yet. We'll start with those ethics, shall we? Faced with death in a lawless region, Janeway must choose between morals and, potentially, her crew. I guess it's supposed to show the difference between Captain Shouty of the Equinox and Janeway when faced with hardship, him willing to murder a bunch of aliens to give his ship a nitrous boost, her steadfastly clinging to her ideals. What it's actually doing, at least for me, is placing a microscope over the inconsistency of Janeway's writing. Here she balks at stealing. A couple of years back she was manufacturing WMDs for the Borg. If we're generous, we could point out that most of Janeway's less reputable actions were performed prior to her little redemption episode in Night, where the crew basically absolved her of blame for getting stranded here and reinforced her beliefs in Federation principles. This was also after she faced the consequences of her actions in Hope and Fear, meeting a member of a species that she, indirectly, helped to massacre. It's certainly true that she's become more of a traditional Starfleet captain after the events of Night in Season 5, and I'd love to think that was intentional, but I'm not convinced that was a deliberate arc and suspect it's just me reading more into it than is there. The dodgy shit that she still pulls on occasion, like being fine with one of her crew doing a murder in Good Shepherd, or B'Elanna pissing on the Prime Directive in Muse, suggests that I'm right. Now, to be clear, I do not think this episode was bad. I always welcome little nods to prior episodes, and I've a soft spot for the Thumbfaces despite, or possibly because of, their inherent goofiness. We'll also give this one some points for there being a decent roster of bit players in it. Juggling all of that into 40 minutes is a fair achievement on its own. I still struggle to get past the feeling that this was all a bit by the numbers, though. Looking at the episode, it's difficult to identify any one aspect of it that's unique, rather than being part of a patchwork of ideas from other stories. Getting trapped inside a bubble is from Gravity, the lack of stars and name of the region is from Night, building up a fleet is from Alliance or Year of Hell, the onus on Federation principles is basically that speech Janeway gives at the end of Alliance. Tuvok and Chakotay pairing up to form a tag team and bring Janeway concerned about her decisions is from Flesh and Blood just 6 episodes back. We marry those borrowed aspects to a script which feels a bit wooden at times, mainly through the use of science fiction tropes, and has an unusual abundance of the cast referring to each other by rank rather than name. There's a point where Janeway even refers to herself as Captain when calling the bridge, something which felt a bit odd at the time. Add it all together and we're left with something that, as I said at the start, looks like it's right up my alley on paper, but somehow manages to be less than the sum of its parts. When you consider the intended message of the story, I can't help but note there's a certain irony in that. End of episode.
I've taken down the banner, all right. It were a joke.
Well, it's too late now.
What do you mean?
I mean it's too late. We've already made too much noise. They're calling Voyager back in.
Oh, where to?
Deep Space Nine.
What a fascinating turn of events, and one that has absolutely no bearing on the overall direction of the channel. How long do you think it'll take to get there?
I'm not sure. How many episodes of Voyager have we got left?
Either 10 or 11, depends on if he splits the last one into 2 parts.
Then I have a sneaking suspicion that we'll get there in about 10 or 11 videos. Woof.